So with the recent rediscovery of 2 episodes of Doctor Who, I've been thinking a lot about missing episodes as a whole, and I've come to an odd conclusion, that missing episodes actually add to Doctor Who. Now this is a very weird concept to say the least, as the idea of missing material is literally the opposite. It takes away from something, as we have less of it. But I think Doctor Who has got around that, and not just because how much was saved by audio recordings, telesnaps and sensor clips, but instead from its premise. The premise of Doctor Who during its early years was a group of people who travel through time and space in a time machine disguised as a police box, with an alien known as the Doctor. In short, the premise is all based around some mystery. We don't know where the characters are going, we don't know who or what they will meet, and we really don't know who the Doctor is. The fact there is so much mystery to these early years means that the fact that such a notable chunk of the original few years is missing is somehow adding to this idea of mystery. There is always something that is just out of reach. Sure, you can listen to these stories or read about what happened, but you'll never truly experience those stories. As a kid, Doctor Who was a big thing. You tend to watch what's airing and then rewatch that, and perhaps dip your toes into the classic era as you grow older. Then as you start to learn more and more about the classics, you reach an era that is missing parts of it. You're slowly uncovering this mysterious show, and there's bits and pieces just out of reach, and no matter how much you try to get those bits, they can't be reached. Suddenly, an era built upon never knowing what's just around the corner always has these bits that are always shrouded in mystery. Rumour is all you've got, built upon people's memories and what few bits and pieces survive of it. You build up your own idea of what these bits are, and then one day, an episode is found. And suddenly, that idea you've constructed, the idea of what this thing actually is shattered as you suddenly know truly what it is. Really, an episode doesn't even need to be found for this idea to work, just the knowledge that it could be. The knowledge that you may never be able to find out the full truth, but it's still possible, and suddenly you're a kid again, who can't buy the DVDs by yourself. Suddenly, that mystery when you first found the show is there again, and may never go away. A fully missing serial is more affected by this due to none of it being able to be glimpsed in its proper form. The Massacre is the most notable one due to this. We know this story so well, and yet we know very little, as anything could be occurring on screen when you hear something in the soundtrack. For most stories we have a handful of telesnaps. They give us some insight into a few frames of an episode. But for this story we don't, and so we know so little about it, to the point that we don't even know what the Abbot's costume looked like, despite being played by Hartnell in the story. And in fact we don't even know how much the Abbot looks like the Doctor. Do they have the same hair, for example? Or is it perhaps Hartnell's own hair, or another wig? Mission to the Unknown is another story that has this effect, but this is a more unique case due to the already odd nature of it, with the lack of the Doctor and the TARDIS. Mission to the Unknown feels like another show at times, and it's completely wrapped in mystery because of this. You'll keep trying to get an idea of what this single episode is like, but there is so little to go on, and given that it's a single episode, it either exists or it doesn't. This effect is still present with partly missing serials though, but it's not as pronounced due to the part existing nature of it, as you can get some idea of the visuals. The less episodes that the serial has does make this effect more prominent though. Something like The Evil of the Daleks has only a single episode out of 7, and due to the setting changing up a bit in the first and last episodes, it means that our idea as a whole is limited, but we do have some idea about the main locations. While on the other hand, a serial like The Underwater Menace has enough surviving material that we have a good idea of the setting, but there are still a few things up for debate, notably the surface locations that only appear in the first and last episodes, or how the destruction of the city is presented. But then on the other end of the scale we have the Daleks master plan, which due to its extreme length of 12 episodes, even with the recent discovery of 2 more, only puts us at 5 episodes, and so there are still so many unknowns. We know very little about episode 8 or the visuals of the final episode. That's not even to mention the Feast of Stephen, which is a completely self-contained episode, and so there is no crossover with the sets or actors outside of the mains. So all in all, even with episodes surviving, there is always mystery to these serials, and the longer the serial with the fewer episodes, the grander that mystery is despite how much we can know about it from what we have. A serial such as The 10th Planet is so well represented that we know most of the details, and while there are some minor mysteries, it doesn't have the same impact as other stories. There may still be mystery for us to uncover, but not compared with other stories that are still in this state of just out of reach, or potentially gone forever. Going beyond the 60s though, the fact that there aren't any missing episodes from season 7 onwards kind of has a perfection to it. By this point we have met the Time Lords and have learned somewhat about the Doctor's past, and so the mystery that the show first had has by this point disappeared somewhat, and at the same time you can watch everything. This is entirely coincidental, but it's a coincidence that adds to the existence of missing episodes. The fact they stop when the main mystery of the show stopped. This makes the mystery of the missing episodes unique to the black and white era. Another aspect to this mysterious nature that I haven't discussed is the mystery behind the missing. By this I mean how a serial doesn't exist and how parts of it do. Let us use my favourite missing story as an example, Marco Polo. A 7-parter that is completely missing. Despite being part of the mostly complete first season of the show, and being one of the most highly sold serials with many copies being made, we don't have any footage for it. Not a single episode survives despite the number of copies made against other serials that had only 1 or 2 and yet still have surviving episodes. The lack of clips also adds to this, as other serials have censor clips or clips that were filmed by fans, and yet nothing for this story. How can a story become missing despite all that it has going against that? We may never know, but that just adds to the mystery of this story, and many others. We may all hate the fact that episodes are missing, and rejoice at their return, but there is always something about an episode that is missing that adds mystery to this era. It's a lot like the days before the internet, when you had to search for information and it wasn't always easily accessible. What we have is something that we know of, but don't know as much as we would want to. It doesn't matter how much research you do, or how deeply you dig. Most of these episodes will almost certainly always just be names on a sheet, and the name on the sheet is exactly what all these stories once were to us. So while these episodes may be lost, these episodes and stories are just mysteries for us to think over and talk about. Mysteries that just add to the already mysterious nature of the show.